analysts are calling on the close monitoring of operations in the local government sphere, or at least they're calling for that. A lot has changed since the last local government elections. The usual straightforward single-party government system kicked to the curb with major municipalities including Johannesburg, Tshwane, Ekurhuleni and Nelson Mandela Bay now governed through coalitions. So considering the chaotic battle for power in some municipalities, how relevant and effective are initiatives such as the Local Government Week, championed by the National Council of Provinces? Well, let's bring in two guests this morning to unpack the story. Political analyst Ntsikelelo Breakfast joins us, as well as the chief of the National Council of Provinces, Seiso Mohai. Both of our guests, a warm welcome to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Ntsikelelo, I want to begin with you this morning because, you know, in that intro we talk about the state of local government now and how much the face of local government has changed. I suppose particularly since the last local government elections in November, we're seeing coalitions in most of the major metros, in all of the major metros around the country. What does that say about how we should also be changing how we approach local government?
Well, Michelle, first of all, you know, the interesting thing about the 2016 elections alongside last year's election is that one-party dominance seems to be a thing of the past, because the ANC have been dealt with a blow. So we've seen a number of coalition formations. But the problem is that these coalition formations, they come across to be unworkable and unstable. And because of that, coalition formations, they give the impression that they are a second best kind of a government, largely because there seems to be a missing link between coalition formations and some conflict management mechanisms. Because my view is that so long as you don't have an independent body to enforce what politicians have agreed upon, you are going to have a problem. So I was over the moon when I was invited by members of parliament to make a presentation and to pitch my ideas to them in terms of this needed conflict management regulatory mechanism that can go a long way in terms of facilitating the smoothness of coalition formations.
So let's bring you into the discussion, because we're in trouble, aren't we, insofar as coalition governance is concerned. And yet that is the face of local government. How do we navigate these waters?
Well, Michelle, precisely why we invited people like Dr. Breakfast and many others, thought leaders yesterday. We are grappling with these issues. How really do we deal with this phenomenon of coalitions, governments as a new practice and reality with no prior experience in South Africa, which accounts for instabilities, the poor accountability and sensitivity of the political parties to the interest of aspirations of the electorate, coalitions not predicated on the broad social contract with the electorate. These are key issues that we're discussing. That is a reality. I mean, it was spelled out. That is a reality to the extent that we do not win a majority in the elections. That forces a coalition government. So we created this platform to ensure that there is a high-level strategic reflection of deeply really looking into intergovernmental relations and look into areas that requires immediate interventions. And an appreciation that that is a reality of South African politics, but also most importantly, to deal with a political culture of patronage that undermines political ethics and accountability across political parties. So these are issues that our discussion was framed on. And we believe also as we proceed today, it will shed much more clarity and help us as a National Council of Provinces to move away from just mere diagnosis to a concrete action plan that will see meaningful interventions made across spheres.
I think just some background for our viewers. It is Local Government Week. It's an integral part of the NCOP's program. Today is day 2, I think, of this 3-day plenary session. Dr. Breakfast, I want to bring you back into the discussion because, you know, for the electorate, the issue is simple, right? Whoever is in power, we want them to work together well so that we can ensure the delivery of services and addressing the most important issues in the community. For political parties, it's different, isn't it? It shouldn't be. The priority should be service delivery. It should be the needs of the electorate. And yet, at least on the face of it, it's more of a power struggle and a struggle of egos.
Yes. Michelle, my view is that there are two reasons that give rise to coalition formations. The first one is political fragmentation. The second one is lack of majoritarianism. And that creates a scope for coalition formations to rise to prominence. Now, coalition formations, they do have advantages because they tend to limit the abuse of political power, because power in a coalition formation, it tends to be diffused to different coalition partners, which is good, as opposed to one political party imposing its hegemonic agenda. But the problem is that the politicians, some of them, they think that politics is a zero-sum game or is a win-lose situation. So I'm arguing that when there are problems, politicians, they need to attack them hard and be soft on each other, as opposed to, using coalition formations for musical chairs, as opposed to using them to render various services to the inhabitants.
I mean, Seiso, the obvious question is, how do we take this 3-day event, insofar as Local Government Week is concerned, and the important discussions, the various people like Dr. Breakfast who you have there to unpack some of the challenges in coalition governance, how do we take what's happening in Local Government Week and translate that into everyday governance where these coalitions exist?
Well, first we believe that moving out of this meeting is going to be crucial, that the South African Local Government Association should develop a uniform norms and standards in consultation with political parties and even broader civil society to really navigate much more closely on the issue of coalitions. And deliberately the discussions dominated and centered around the issue of coalitions. But also, without preempting what the developments are going to be today, but it's going to be more really of taking the package out of the discussions and to ensure that there is more of a declarations, not just declarations, but a concrete action plan that must develop out of this meeting. Because from yesterday's deliberations, it came out clearly, like for instance on issues of finance and accountability and institutional capacity, and also looking into skills base for appropriate areas of work and governance and administration. Those issues come up very clearly, that the professionalization of the public service is an urgent matter that should not be delayed. So the National Council of Provinces, in fact, is a beneficiary to this discussion to the extent that we are going to improve and up our oversight and accountability standards. So that is going to help us, that the methodology that we are using for oversight and accountability will be much more improved and much more persuasive for change to take place.
Oversight and accountability, Dr. Breakfast, those are key. And it's the issues that Parliament has on many occasions in the past been criticized for a lack thereof. So, on the one hand, we talk about SALGA developing these norms and standards insofar as coalitions are concerned. Norms and standards, but what would be the sanction where parties fall out of step with what SALGA has in mind?
Well, that's why, Michelle, I'm arguing that there needs to be an independent body that enforces these regulatory mechanisms. But also, I think the citizens, the public should be taken on board when these formations are made, because some people argue that coalition formations are not a byproduct of a democracy. It's just a political arrangement that is made by the political elite, because when people go to polling stations to cast their votes, they don't put a cross next to a plethora of leaders, whether they can work together or not. So I think the public should be taken on board when political parties want to work together, so that the aspirations of the people are not forgotten.
Certainly, and we know so many of the challenges that we have in our country. are concentrated really on the local government level. So important issues being discussed in that plenary session, day 2 today, with wrapping up tomorrow. It is Local Government Week. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast is a political analyst, and Seiso Mohai is the NCOP's chief whip, both weighing in on this important discussion. Thanks very much to both of you for your time.